full tonight. Yeah, I heard. Good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and fans of percussion and Oregon Symphony, and Carlos Kalmar, the orchestra's music director.
Good evening, everyone.
I'm Robert McBride. I work at All Classical FM in Portland, and on nights like this, I get to spend a half an hour chatting with Carlos about music. For you, thank you all for being here. It's a good crowd tonight, and I understand we're going to have a full house, or nearly so.
It's a very good house tonight.
Good. And it may be the loudest symphony concert you've ever heard. Not that it will be loud all the time.
What have you said?
Yeah, there will be times tonight with an array of 4 stations of percussion instruments across the front of the stage. It's going to be fun and flashy.
Well, this is a visual concert, aside from the things that you're going to hear that are, many of them you know. I mean, if you think about the entire Carmen piece by Rodion Shchedrin, it's music that you know, you just probably have never heard it the way it's being played and with the instrumentation that is there. But aside from that, you probably have already seen when you got in that back there are a couple of instruments that we already have. It's a huge array of percussion instruments already set up. And the fun thing is that in intermission, the orchestra, as usual, leaves the stage. And in this case, we are going to lower this thing because we have to load all the other percussion instruments, because in the end all these percussion instruments are probably only half of what you're going to hear. The rest is going to be up front, and then you see our soloist Colin Curry just running around.
And I can imagine the people sitting in the front row are going to have their hair blowing back some of the time during Jennifer Hignan's percussion concerto. Well, let's begin at the beginning with that wonderful little Turkish march by Beethoven that he wrote for a play called The Ruins of Athens. And once upon a time, the only, like Beethoven's time, pretty much, the only percussion instruments in the orchestra were the timpani. And then Haydn in one of his symphonies and Mozart and Beethoven started adding cymbals and triangle and bass drum, which they borrowed from Turkish instruments or were inspired by Turkish instruments. So you'll hear those in this first little Beethoven march, and then it just gets crazier and crazier from there with more and more percussion.
Well, this is an invention from those times, in a way. I don't know why the classical composers never really thought seriously about using instruments other than the pitched timpani, because, I mean, we are all aware that there are things with which you can make a lot of noise, and percussion instruments, in a way, I could argue that anything can be a percussion instrument of some sort. I tell you one little, well, when it's empty, it sounds really well. The thing is, I once worked with this wonderful percussionist, Evelyn Glennie. And Evelyn at that time played 2 concerti with me. One of them was a Japanese piece, pitched instrument, a marimba phone, which you're going to see. I mean, there is already one over there, but you're going to see another one on this side of the stage after the break. And then she played a piece by an English composer that I don't remember neither the title nor the composer, but it's not the point. The point was that there was, like tonight, quite an array of instruments here on the front of the stage with which Evelyn played, but there was also a couple of garbage cans and things with which you cook that were just displayed here, and Evelyn kept on hitting on everything there was on the stage. She didn't hit me, but it was a lot of fun. So in a way, there is anything there, and in the times of Haydn, Mozart and Beethoven, all they could come up with, which was a real revolution, was this Turkish-influenced instruments. And I think the piece that we are playing for you is one of the very, very few that exist with all those instruments. If you want to argue that, why on earth are we playing this piece by Beethoven? Because whatever Robert and I are going to tell you about this piece, it's going to be longer than the piece itself. It's what we call, I've said this terminology of music, it's a parking overture. For everybody who didn't arrive in time to the hall, so they still can get in and hear the Carmen. But boy, you have to find parking spot pretty early to get to this piece. The Turkish March by Beethoven, 1 minute 30 seconds. That's all there is. Very cute.
You know, it's interesting that everything with humans is complicated and often paradoxical. The Viennese and the Turks were at war for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So you might think that the Viennese would just want to have nothing to do with the Turkish people or their culture. But no, the composers go, hey, those instruments are kind of fun. Let's use them. Hey, that coffee's good. Let's do our own thing on that.
In the end, let's hope that some minor things that are positives come out of any war. I prefer to get to those things without the war, but okay, that's
But you know,
me.
yes, it is a parking overture tonight, but also it's interesting historically. The first piece has those first percussion instruments to make it into the concert hall, and then we work our way up to the Higden Concerto, a very modern piece written in 2005 with all sorts of instruments that Beethoven never would have imagined. But then in between, you mentioned Carmen. So Bizet's opera Carmen inspired a ballet score by Rodion Shchedrin, which he wrote in the 1950s for his wife, who was a ballerina. They are still married, by the way, which I think is delightful. So it is for strings and percussion only, which is a little unusual. And it's kind of a weird piece, because the melodies are so familiar, but he does such unexpected things with them. Have you done this piece before?
No, I know this piece. I have listened to this piece over and over, never conducted it. Now, first of all, this is what comes out when you're married to a ballet dancer. Probably she bucks you and says, you have to write a piece to me. And history tells that Shchedrin was not that keen to write this piece because his wife, we all know that the greatest male dancers of all times are Rudolf Nureyev, Mikhail Baryshnikov, Nijinsky, pretty much that's it. In terms of female dancers of all times, there is for sure Margot Fonteyn, and this lady, Maya Plisetskaya. She was the real deal in her time. So she asked her husband to write a piece based on Carmen. And Shchedrin thought oh, that's not what I really want to do because I have to utilize the music of another composer, and that is hard, and I might not make my case. The fun part of it is that the piece you're going to hear tells you pretty much the history of the entire opera as we know it. It just tells it very differently. So you are going to hear all the very famous tunes, and you are going even to hear two more that are not from Carmen, but you know them well. One is from the Arlésienne suite, the Farandole, which we also played recently in the original version here. And he shapes it all in such a way that sometimes you will sit there and it will be like in a dream. The start and the end, which are similar, it's like a dream because it's incredibly atmospheric, very silent, very quiet music, and still you can hear a couple of tunes that you know very, very well. Then the second thing he does is he takes music that we know from Carmen and slightly distorts it rhythmically. So you have a piece that you know very well, but the rhythm is a little bit wrong in this piece. And on third, he adds a couple of percussion instruments to the mix. And that makes it sometimes very funny. Very funny. And sometimes there is one spot where in every rehearsal, this is not encouragement for you, but I tell you what happened. In every rehearsal it happened, he just gears up for the most famous tune there is in Carmen. There is one tune that we all know, that okay. And he really gears up and sets it up, and you know it's coming, and the melody is simply not there. It's only the complement. So our wonderful orchestra started to sing in the rehearsal because they know it, that they're like, come on. So I of course thought like, well, if on that spot I turn around to the audience and say like, okay, bring it on, you are all going to sing. That is one of the funniest moments. But the great thing that I adore about this piece, it is that it doesn't, for sure, it doesn't end there. The great thing about this piece is that it is so atmospheric and all the passion of the music is there. It's a very, very good piece for ballet dancers. Very good, because in ballet you have to utilize things that are fast, big movement, energetic, etc. But you also have to give ample room, and in this case I'm thinking about the great Maya Plisetskaya, the lead dancer from the Bolshoi Ballet, and whoever was her partner at that time on stage, doing this incredible pas de deux, and this is the most sublime music. And I also have to add, I adore opera and I adore singers, for sure. But it's so wonderful to play all these great tunes and nobody's singing.
Well, I don't know. You set us up for Toreador karaoke tonight.
Yeah, this is trust me.
I'm glad that you described it as a dream. That makes a lot of sense. The way it begins and the way it ends, and then the way it's sort of fractured along the way, the way dreams will often do, kind of kaleidoscopic thing. Thank you.
I mean, it's all the progression of the piece. It's like the piece itself. I mean, in which order the tunes that we all know appear, it's pretty much like the original. He didn't fiddle around that much. And in the end, we know that in the end of the opera, Carmen gets stabbed to death. And the melody that leads to that is at the end of the entire thing until she's dead. And then, okay, the ending is different because he ends with the dream. If you will, it's night falling again. We come from the night, we travel an entire journey. There is this fascination of this woman, there is this drama, and then she gets killed, and then night falls again. It's a real arch.
And that's only the first half of the concert.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then there's intermission. You can go out and get some earplugs. And then as Carlos said, they put the stage down rather like they were, bringing on a piano from the depths or something to bring up all these percussion instruments. And then Colin Currie, a wonderful player and charming young man from Scotland. You mentioned Evelyn Glennie. I mean, these are probably the two most famous solo percussionists
by a long shot
touring the world right now. They're both from Scotland. What's with that?
I don't know what's in Scotland. Maybe they wanted to escape the bad weather there.
And the haggis.
Matter of fact, I know this. Colin, this is the third time that Colin is here during my time as music director, and he always is a great success. And I think he already posted on Facebook something like, "I would like to transfer Portland to Scotland, so he always can be in Portland." Thought like, yeah.
Well, he could move here.
Well, he has family there. I'm not going to argue.
Well, you know who else loves Portland? Jennifer Higdon, the woman who wrote the concerto that Colin is playing tonight. And her dad lives here, so she comes here once in a while. She is one of the nicest humans I have ever met. In fact, there's a really charming picture that one of my colleagues took of Jennifer and I. Andrea Rennie took a picture of Jennifer and I at the station at All Classical FM when Jennifer was there the other day for an interview. She's just the nicest person. And when I interviewed Colin, he said that whenever he's around her, he's always got his arm around her because she just feels like such a positive force. He wants to be that close to her. I
love Jennifer Higdon. She, I was commenting the other day a little bit about the personal style of great artists. And I can tell you that whether it is a composer or whether it is a soloist, and we have seen here in Portland, Oregon, many of the great soloists of our time in both classical and non-classical music, and I would dare to say that 85% of them are very normal, humble, charming people who just have a very strong will and a very strong opinion, but they are the easiest people to work with. And
well, you're like that, actually.
Oh, I don't know whether the orchestra will tell you. No.
Just saying what I think.
Thank you. No, but Colin, a delight. Jennifer, she knows so well what she wants, and of course she writes it down. That is one part of what she needs to do. But then she has been here in each rehearsal that we did of her piece, and she always was listening very, very, very intently to what we were doing and suggesting here and there what we could do better in a way that it is so welcoming for all of us. Because you know how you can be, I mean, it's her piece and she could say like, no, we want it very differently. That's not what I thought. None of that. First of all, I know that she really likes the orchestra, and she also adores Portland, of course. And then the way she interacts with us, it was so full of charm and respect, and I really can appreciate that.
And if you want to meet Jennifer Higdon and Colin Currie, you can, because they will both be at the Classical Millennium table in the lobby after the concert tonight to sign CDs, and you'll love them both.
Now you have to, you may think, how does such a concerto come about? And the good thing is, as Robert pointed out, there are only 2 percussionists in the world, and I would say for the last 10 years, that have made it into having a real important career as percussionists, touring the world. Now, of course, if you play a percussion instrument and you want to play a concerto with orchestras, you have to turn to the late 20th century and to the 21st century. So both Colin Currie and Evelyn Glennie have a couple of pieces that were written for them. And Jennifer Higdon's piece was written for Colin Currie. And I know that when the idea came to life, and it was about time for Jennifer to think really, okay, how do I want to write this piece? What should be this piece about, etc., etc. She went to Colin and said, okay, tell me a little bit, what is your strong side? What do you really like in percussion instruments? Because, I mean, you have percussion instruments and you have 100, easy, that you can play. And Colin said, well, amongst others, I'm very, very fond of the marimba phone. And so marimba phone, vibraphone, it's like the 2 brothers, and they will be set up on this side of the stage after the break so you can see them. Marimba phone is the wooden one. So Jennifer just wrote this focusing a little bit on the marimba, but not only. And what I really like about what happened in this concert is she actually made the concert very fun to listen, in part extremely high energy, which is what you expect. She made it easy for the conductor, because you know how it is. You have, as a conductor, a percussion concerto that is completely new, and you think like, oh my God, it's going to be all these crazy bars where I have to twist my arm this way to even get around the piece. None of that. It's very... She has made my life kind of easy, and I'm very grateful for that. But for me, the most important thing of this piece is the colors, the coloristic elements of percussion instrument, and what you are going to see Colin, because Colin, you can see him better than you can see our percussion gang in the back. in the back. In the percussion section, there is probably not a piece in music that you've ever witnessed with so much percussion going on, because I told you, this is going to be full, but our 5 percussionists are going to play with Colin. And sometimes they will use techniques that are very, very unusual, like striking the instruments with a bow. Yes, sometimes percussionists use a bow, like it's, by the way, the bow of a double bass. It has to be a big bow, and it makes this sound. And then there is one of the spots that I like the most, because I have no idea that you can make that noise until I got this concerto, is at the very beginning of the second movement, which is slow, you will hear one sound. It's very quiet, and then you hear something like, and you have to look to our timpanist. He does that with an instrument. He's not whistling. And that is a fascinating technique, and what comes out of that and how they interact, it's great fun. And then, of course, there is this, in the last movement, this huge, wonderful cadenza, where Colin completely takes off, and I go into hiding, because I'm very close to it. It's fun.
Guaranteed to curl your hair. Then there's one more short piece at the end, which is also fairly percussion intensive, a rumba-inspired Cuban overture by George Gershwin. This piece, the Gershwin always sounds to me like it begins in progress. I've always kind of wanted to look at the score, because it's kind of an odd beginning. It's like we opened the door and walked into a room or something. Does it strike you that way?
The interesting thing that strikes me in all the pieces of George Gershwin is the melodic invention is fantastic. The instrumentation was not his strong side. So as a conductor, in a way, you have to help here and there. Now, the Cuban overture, it's true. It is like, I mean, he got inspired to write this piece because he was vacationing in Havana. Those were the days when you could vacation in Havana. And he liked the rhythm, he liked the instruments, so he decided to write this piece. And it is like, it sounds the beginning like George Gershwin is walking in Havana and hears something in a bar and just gets in there and gets soaked into this wonderful music. And there it is, and it's a very classical overture with fast-paced, energetic music, and then it gets quiet in the middle, and it's very melodic, very lyrical, and then we get to the fast part again, and then it's a wonderful way to end the concert. And I can tell you one thing already, that yes, again, this is Percussion Spectacular. All our percussionists are going to play, and Colin Curry is going to play with us that piece. He said, I want to be in the orchestra back there. So Colin is going to join forces.
Sitting a few rows back here is Neil DuPont, principal percussionist of the Oregon Symphony, who has much to do tonight. You want to just wave to the gang, Neil? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very fun concert for Neil and his comrades.
I just tell you one, because I've been talking about all this instrument, I tell you one of the things that Neil has to do, which in concerts like this, it's really tricky. He's the principal percussionist, so you have an array of this big of percussion instruments. So he has to go home, assess what is there, and then start assigning instruments to his colleagues. He decides, you play this, you play that. That's the easy part. The more difficult part is when these wonderful musicians have to switch instruments, because he has to think very carefully, okay, I am here and I need to get there while my colleagues, Gordon, for example, has to come from here, there, and we cannot meet in the middle because we are never going to get to the instruments, etc. Once he has figured that out, he goes and works with our crew in setting up the instruments. This is a really many thoughts have to be given to the fact how the percussion is set up. If in a piece like all the pieces of tonight, maybe with the exception of the first, but all the others, if the principal percussionist just wouldn't say, okay guys, here is the list of instruments that we have, only 25 of them, you go and figure it out, it's the mess of the century. So he has to think about the marimba goes here, the crotals are here, the snare drum, this snare them, the tom-toms there, etc. I think that in the end, Neil will agree, it's a wonderful nightmare to be had.
You've come up with some good phrases tonight, Carlos. A wonderful nightmare to be had is a good one. I'm interested in Jennifer's interaction with you and what she has had to say to you about this orchestra.
Well, it's both. Jennifer and Colin even more. They said something about the Oregon Symphony that I must say gladly I have heard being said from the mouths of many great soloists. I mean, Colin said it. He looked at me after yesterday's rehearsal. We really worked the piece, and he said, "You know, this orchestra. We are talking major orchestras. I mean, this is so insanely good." And I told him, "You don't have to tell me that. Tell all the others. We are very proud to have such a great orchestra, and we are, of course, very, very proud that all of you support this wonderful orchestra. But it's nice if a great composer of our times and a soloist who travels around and knows all the Philadelphia's, Chicago's, London, etc. orchestras and says, the Oregon Symphony is right there."
I'm glad I asked. Thank you for being here tonight. This is way more fun with an audience, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
And this is videotaped. All of the Saturday night pre-concert chats are videotaped, so you can find those at our website, allclassical.org. And tell your friends who weren't able to be here tonight. Also tell your friends that this concert will be repeated on Monday night.
Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, true.
Something.
But on Monday, and Carlos and I will do our little dog and pony show on Monday as well.
Will be fun.
Carlos Kalmar.
Robert McBride.
I'm going to stay out here and shoot.